Matt Shearer, our LinkedIn dude, is going to be joining us about 8 o'clock. He is the program chair for the Military Rotary Club. So he's running the function tonight. He's handed the reins for this to me, and he'll come join us. But he's our LinkedIn guru. So you may hear him talk a little bit about LinkedIn at some point. I'm just so excited to have all you guys with us this evening. Andy, good news, man.
Hey, John. Hey, how are you?
Good. Can I say it? You want to say it?
Well,
Go ahead.
So hi everybody. For those that I don't know, I'm Andy Toom. So I'm part of one of the Thursday night cohorts of MTR, and just on Monday I kind of declared victory, and I've started work with my first job outside of the Army after 23 years of being in Mother Army, and I made the successful jump away from everything DoD or Army, and I took a job with Volkswagen, who make Volkswagen cars. So I work in their corporate HR department, and it's good. So it's a drink from the fire hose, but there's a lot of goodness there. So thanks, Don, for letting me share the success for a second. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we want to celebrate every success. That's great. Congratulations. That is so cool. You were worried about how that was going to come about, right? And, you were doing the internship with them. So
so I did the Hiring a Hero, or the Dirty Skill Bridge with them, and we were doing it was going well, but near the end they had offered me a kind of to continue, but really not at the level of competition I really wanted. And it's a moderate win because I'm still a contractor, so I'm not a 1099 contractor, but they have new employees generally come in through a contract house to really continue the onboarding period to see if you're really going to fit or not, and then before they make the jump to being full employee, because when you're a full employee you get like better health benefits, the 401k, their pension program, a vehicle, that kind of thing. So I'm still kind of walking on eggshells a bit. And
you're going to get there.
I think so. I mean, they were super excited to have me, blah blah blah, and so I would have preferred to have been an employee, an actual full-time employee of Volkswagen, but you got to go with your gut sometimes, and I think that they're telling me they're not talking to others in the company. It's a very common practice for that particular firm, so I felt comfortable in my choice.
Excellent. Anybody else have any good news to share before we get started? Everybody's either in transition or thinking about transition, maybe already starting a second transition. I've been in transition quite a while. Mark.
Yes, I received my disability compensation rating this week, finally.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. For everybody, that was one of our big discussion points last week about 2 weeks ago about the timing and the process and everything else, because it can get kind of unnerving. It's like, what's happening in this black hole? You just can't figure it out. So congratulations, Mark.
Thank you.
Well, hey, this is a celebration of some sort. It's not necessarily we're celebrating Christmas, though we are a week away. What is this? 8 days away from Christmas. Hope you got your shopping done, or you're on your last phases. I posted something on Facebook the other day. I said, are you an all-year shopper? Are you a month of December shopper? Or are you a last-minute shopper? I won't make everybody answer that question. So we're getting ready for the holiday season. It was the 12th of December of 2019. Matt Shearer and I were sitting in a military transition program conducted by CMA, Centurion Military Alliance. And we heard Shante Hall use the words, "Don't transition alone." And we thought about that and said, how do you not transition alone? You're not always people around you in your shop or in your squadron, group, whatever, who are transitioning at the same time. You may not know people who are transitioning. You may not be doing the same thing. Some people may not be able to be working some of those things, because I know some bosses keep you pretty busy up to the end and some give you more time. So it can be a challenge. Matt and I looked at each other. We had a meeting over the Christmas holiday last year. We had a meeting in January. We came up with a concept called Military Transition Roundtable, utilizing a mastermind group, a group of your peers to be able to get together, to get to know, to hold you accountable, to be vulnerable with, to be able to ask questions, get feedback. And we have been running ever since February. We started with I think, Jeff, you were in one of our beta cohorts back in February. Yeah, the first one. Yeah. And we started testing it out for about 3 or 4 meetings, and we said, we got something here. Let's go run. And we got 2 going, and then we started a 3rd one in August. So here we are, a year since that point. Some concept to, in October, we got our official IRS designation as a 501c3 nonprofit, and we are off on the fundraising realm, and I'll touch on that at the very end. And don't worry, I'm not here to solicit you guys for money, but if you know others that we can connect with, that would be fantastic. We are looking next year to grow even more. We've been out connecting and doing a lot of briefings, but tonight I want to share with you Jeff Carter, because there's a couple things that I think he did really well, and I want to make sure I don't steal his thunder, but there are a couple things that I talk to military who have transitioned come up over and over and over and over and over over again. And Jeff did a really good job at not letting those be the hindrances to his transition. And he worked into Amazon and got a great job. So appreciate Jeff coming in and sharing tonight and being able to talk through this. This is an interactive. This is not meant to be a 30, 40-minute presentation by Jeff. So if you have a question, you'll raise your hand on the screen. Anne Marie and I are kind of watching. We'll be able to call on you. If you're not getting heard, try to come off mute and interrupt. And I think Jeff said he was okay with that. And this is about you. He's shaking his head yes. This is about you guys getting information tonight to help you in your transition. So we would love to have you consider, if you're not already with Military Transition Roundtable, to consider joining us in a cohort. I know a bunch of you are looking to start. I don't know where you're at in your transition, but I saw about 5 or 6 people this afternoon on LinkedIn. They were transitioning military, and I just shot them the note and said, you ought to come and join us. And I see a bunch of people there tonight. So thanks for joining us. This is about helping you. This is about helping you with a group of people, of your peers, to be able to talk things out and be accountable to. One thing we do every week is, what did you promise the last 2 weeks? What did you do or not do? Why not? What are you going to do to get it done? And so it's so helpful to be held accountable as you walk through the process. So I am ready to turn it, unless anybody's got any comments, questions on the evening, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff. All right, Jeff.
All right. Hey, thanks, Don. I appreciate that. Guys, thanks for having me on tonight. I see one of us are on here tonight. I hope that there's something for everybody as I kind of go through my discussion. What I'm going to talk about tonight is setting the pace, and just kind of remember that word pace here for a minute, but setting the pace on your transition. I'm going to couch sort of how I did mine in a 24-month timeline, but I was pretty prepared to retire. I knew that when I took my last assignment to the San Antonio area, that was my last assignment. And so we were setting up to do that transition as a family. Just because I'm going through a 24-month timeline that worked for me and some of the thoughts on where my head was and where my family was, it sure doesn't mean that you have to have 24 months. I mean, the timeline is the timeline. There can be a 12-month transition. There can be a 12-week transition if that's the situation that you find yourself in. Hopefully what you'll be able to pick up, though, is that there are some common themes that anybody, I think, can pull regardless of the time frame that they've got to transition. But for me, it was 24 months. And starting about that 2-year mark, I realized that, I had spent 26 and a half years in the military, and I hadn't done it alone, right? Of those 26 and a half years, I had been married for 22 of them, and my wife and my son, they've been a huge part of my career, from everything from spouses organizations to military balls to 13 moves with the family to 8 schools with my kid. And I realized that we had done the military together as a family, and we needed to do transition together as a family too. I've talked to some folks who have thought they could kind of do it on their own, and the good part about like MTR is they don't make you do it on your own. It's about having a group of supporting folks around you. But I would say if you have a family with you and you're involved in some sort of a family environment, that you have a team around you at that time too. My wife and I, we sat down and kind of just had a discussion, and that discussion really surrounded about 3 different questions. And these 3 questions are pretty important because it really sets the tone and anchors you into what it is that you're going to try to build a plan to do. And those 3 questions are pretty simple. Where do I want to go and retire? What do I want to do when I retire? And how much do I want to make whenever I retire? You have to prioritize, and we prioritized those things 1 through 3 as a family, and we decided that where we wanted to retire was the most important thing for us. So we chose New Braunfels, Texas, and started to work towards the building of a home and those kind of things. And then after that, we had to prioritize, what do I want to do or how much I want to make? Every family, every situation is different. You might prioritize what it is you want to do, and then you go seek that job that's in that enterprise that you're interested in. Or some people, it might be, how much do you want to make? And you could care less where you live, and you could care less what you do to be able to make that. But the point is you just have to basically drop anchor on something. And so for us, we dropped anchor on the where and set our priorities from there. So at that point, you got to have to think through. We thought through a lot of branches and sequels, and I'm just going to name a few, but we won't talk about all of them tonight. But we needed to figure out where exactly we wanted to build a home. Do we want to buy a home? What did we want to do for my wife's career? She's a school teacher. Where did she want to teach? And so we had to decide if we could figure out a place to go close to where she wanted to teach. My son entering high school, what was a good school, all of those kind of things. And that helped us kind of pull together the idea of really what it is we wanted to focus on and where we wanted to go from there. And that's a long discussion. That's not a night kind of thing, right? We talked about that over glasses of wine in the evening after dinner for a while to try to make sure we knew exactly what it is we were trying to accomplish there. So really that first 6 months or so for us was just pre-planning, right? Building our plan, figuring out what we wanted to do. And by the time I had hit the 18-month mark, park. I had run across Don. We'd had a coffee and a rainy day on a Starbucks off of I-35. And I got to the point where, all right, it's time to, set the pace, right? That question that plagues you from the minute that you start transition is, what do you want to do? And at the beginning of our coffee, that's just what Don said. He goes, Jeff, what do you want to do? And I fumbled around and I had a horrible answer and it wasn't very well thought out. And I didn't know, right? And I don't think I'm probably alone in that. I think a lot of folks who have been sort of in the institution of the military for as long as most of us have been into it are pretty calm and okay with being told what the next job is, where you're going to go, what you're going to do. And now all of a sudden I had a choice, right? It was up to me to figure out what I wanted to do. And I struggled with that. Don helped me a lot. Long story short, I boiled it down to really kind of risk and compliance was where I wanted to be. It was a skill set that I had in the military that had kind of spoke to me. I enjoyed that type of work. I knew what I didn't want to do too. I had been in security forces and I wasn't interested in moving into the law enforcement arena. So I was able to sort of weed some of those things out too. That took sheriff's departments and state patrols and all that kind of stuff off the table. And after I kind of had a figure of where I wanted to go, it was time to set that pace.
I want to interrupt you. Can I go back one question to your conversation with your wife and your kids? And I know a number of people get the answer, dear, whatever you want to do, we'll follow you. How did you move past that? Or maybe that wasn't a problem for you, but how did you get them so they'd engage?
Well, my wife had been a school teacher and is still a school teacher, and she had basically placed her career sort of on hold and stayed in the classroom while we traveled around. So I knew that she had aspirations to be a principal. We had obviously talked about what she would try to do with herself after we retired and we could focus on her. And so that conversation, we never really got to the point where she didn't have a voice. My wife always has a voice and she always has an opinion. And it was a great conversation for us and exciting and enlightening for her. The one who didn't really have an opinion was my son. He was like, I don't care. I'll go wherever. As long as I have a baseball team, I just want to play baseball, that kind of thing, right? So we kind of had to bring him along a little bit. Building the plan together with my wife was pretty good. And she was definitely a partner in it because she had some goals and some desires that she wanted to achieve in this second part of our life as well.
Excellent. Thank you. And then go back to our conversation. Remember the one thing you said you didn't want to do? I want you to focus on that because this is important. It's the emotions inside of us that we have to pay attention to. And you said, this is what I don't want to do.
Right. I had mentioned, again, I had said that I had been involved in law enforcement and had 3 different opportunities to basically be the Air Force equivalent of a police chief. And I had sort of just been in sort of the underbelly of the Air Force, if you will, because it's a microcosm of society. You have criminals just like you do everywhere else. And that had been where I had thrived, right? In the military was running police entities and being able to do those type of things and work through being able to provide community policing, engaging with the public. But I was tired of seeing the bad in people. I didn't want to be involved in that any longer. I didn't want to hear about and be immersed in crime or victim-based crimes or any of those type of things. And I was kind of ready to just move away from that, have a little healthier place for me in part number 2 of my life, which really entailed sort of distancing myself from that part of human nature that really drives customers for law enforcement folks like myself.
Thanks. I think that's important. We all recognize those things that we don't want to do. And sometimes we say, oh, that just comes along with the territory. Not always. No. So pay attention to it. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, no problem. And so what I needed to do then was I remembered one assignment I had. I worked a lot with a comm team and we were developing contingency plans for facilities. And they had this acronym called PACE. And it was the primary, the alternate, the contingency, and the emergency systems that we needed to have up. So I thought, well, you know what? I can do the same thing because I need a primary thing that I want to do myself.
I think he froze. He'll be right back. Well, don't be afraid to ask questions, guys, because I think the point, one thing that was really good that I really liked, that's why I wanted to bring it out, is you got to pay attention to that internal piece inside of you that says, I don't want to do this part. I don't enjoy this part. Because you might be able to find a job that's a little bit different using your positive skills that doesn't have the negative side to it. And keep listening because that's what he did. And I think that's so important. How many people have had a conversation with their family and their spouse about what you want to do? How did it go?
I had the same thing what you said. You hit the nail on the head. What do you want to do? Where do we want to go? And it's whatever you want to do, however you want to do it. And took a long time to get us past that and develop a plan. But
was there something you did to get yourself past that?
Not really. Just antagonizing.
Okay.
we kept narrowing it down smaller and smaller, and it just worked out. So. Hopefully.
Okay.
We'll see.
Okay.
Once.
Thanks, John.
Hey, Don.
Appreciate you being honest.
Hey, Don, this is James.
No,
Simon.
please go ahead.
Actually, it was just the opposite for us because I said, I've been dragging them around for so many years. I said, I'll go wherever you want to go. You determine, let me know, and I'll figure it out from there. But that really didn't work out. And as we've been continuing to have some of those evening discussions with a glass of wine or what have you, we finally came down to say, okay, we can't, I just can't dump that whole responsibility on her. It has to be more of a conversation on what we want to do. And then really, like he was talking to some level, even down deeper to that, to say, okay, what are our priorities? And we prioritized it. And, and even then it still may change. So that's the wonder. It's just like normal military planning. The plan is just great until first contact. And then it's just a guide. And that's kind of what we're doing with it.
I don't have a spouse, so I had to do it kind of on my own. I knew what I didn't want to do, like Jeff, and I just said, everybody would say, oh, you're great at your job. Do you want to do this? We have all these opportunities. And I said, nope, I don't want it to be my plan A, B, C, D, or E. I kind of want it to be my plan F. Yeah.
Okay.
And if all other things didn't work out, then I could always fall back on the skill that I had. But because of that, a couple years ago I started asking, trying to listen to that inner voice. What do I want to do? What else am I get at outside of aircraft maintenance? Like I want to wear my earrings and get my hair done, do my nails, be a woman, you know what I mean? And maybe I'll catch me a husband, I don't know.
Yeah, there you go.
So I had to really kind of still myself, and that's how I met Don, was following that inner voice. And my daughter just said, I don't care what you do, I just don't want to move anymore.
Yeah.
So, I had to find something that I can travel with while being stationary, if you get it. So virtual world, capitalizing on that, the ability to do what I do during this as I'm in transition, because I still am in transition. But my kids just didn't want to move anymore. We traveled all over the world, state to state, and 10 schools, 11 schools a piece before they got out of high school with the older two. And the younger one, she's just like, no more, Mom. I want to go to one school for 4 years, please.
Yeah.
I said, okay.
Yeah. They say there's two best times to make a decision, right? One is way back when the time was right. And the second one is today. So when you're talking about your family, the best way to get your family to interact with you today is to have that relationship throughout the entire career. But if you didn't have it then, there's no better day than today to have the conversation to start it. So thanks, Camille. I love that you guys have that conversations.
Hey, Don, this is Chair. Just want to share some good news with everybody in the forum. And it's a good thing that Jeff is, I guess, offline or can't hear me, because it has to do with him.
He said he's working a reboot.
Is he? Okay, great. I'll say it quickly. Well, thanks to Jeff, just got the announcement for internship with Amazon. In fact, with the loss prevention, physical security area that Jeff actually is involved in as a program manager. And it was all due to Jeff getting me on the right track through mutual people that we know within the security forces area. I contacted Jeff, reached out to him, and he gave me the same 3 questions that he just articulated. So that got me to thinking. And so one thing led to another, basically, and went through the process for the Hiring Our Heroes, HOH fellowship, and just got the official offer from Amazon to be a part of their internship. So I just wanted to share that great news for everybody, and highlight that it was due to reaching out there, making a connection with Jeff, because I did not know Jeff 3 weeks ago or so, but it was through mutual connections. So Jeff, thank you very much. I know I already communicated with him already. I didn't know that this forum was going to happen until I saw it on LinkedIn early this afternoon. So I appreciate the announcement for posting this and getting all of us connected. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for sharing. So which was the most important for you as you went through those 3 questions?
Yeah, the first 3 questions, very similar to Jeff.
Keep it fairly short, but go ahead.
Oh, yeah, very similar to Jeff. We knew when we came to San Antonio, we're going to transition. So number 1 was already set. We're going to stay here. What I wanted to do was still in question. And then it was through discussion with Jeff that helped me kind of narrow down to both the physical security and or the compliance area. So that's kind of where I focused in on. And how much do I want to make? Enough to just maintain my current living and send the kids to college, because they're both in college age now. So that's all I'm looking for.
There you go. One thing for that, and I see Jeff is back, and I'm going to turn it back over to him, is when you think about money, don't undersell yourself. You got to figure out what the market going rate is. I remember, in fact, it was Sean Thompson who graduated with the group about the time Jeff did. He went to a Society of Military Engineers transition workshop, and the guy said he was an 06 coming out, you could be anywhere between 120 and 165. That's a pretty broad range, right? But at least it gives you a range to kind of start figuring out, and then where you should be inside of that. I talk to a lot of people who come out and say, I really don't need to make a lot of money. But at the same time, you're kind of underselling yourself. You ought to put a BHAG out there. Anybody familiar with a BHAG? Big, hairy, audacious goal. What do you want to get? Now, sure, we all want to get 500,000, right? So you got to be realistic, but maybe that 120 to 165, what does it take to be on the upper end? What kind of job is that? Would I enjoy that job? And work yourself down and figure out where you want to be in there, because you have some goals probably in life. Kids through college, right, Camille? You got some kids you want to get through college. You want to have a right house somewhere. You want to do certain things. So have those things in mind about where you want to go. And I'm going to turn it back. Jeff, are you hearing us okay?
I am. Yep. I
Yeah.
have no idea. I think my computer was at its 12-hour point and rebooted from this morning. So.
All right. Okay.
But I'm back on. VPN's working and everything.
Right.
Everything seems to be clicking along like it's supposed to. So.
Yeah, we were in our meeting this morning with Anne Marie. Let me introduce Anne Marie to everybody. She is our treasurer for the Military Transition Roundtable. She doesn't normally come to our cohorts, but she's helping manage everything tonight. So I appreciate her being here, and she's got a lot of neat skills. One thing that we were in a meeting this morning, and the whole power to our house went out, probably the whole neighborhood. And I dropped my computer about a week or two ago, so my battery hookup doesn't work. And guess what? I was out. So I understand what you're saying, Jeff. So Jeff, I'm going to turn it back to you. I think you might be going out again. Jeff, can you hear us?
I think Sean has his hand up. If you wanted to
sorry.
hear something about Sean's iPhone has his hand up from our earlier discussion. Didn't know if he had something to share.
Sean, jump on in there.
Let me try to figure this out. This is my first Zoom meeting here. So,
was it really? Well, welcome.
So I was just going to say when discussion about what you wanted to do post military, I didn't really know. I had no idea. I went into the transition process in the SFL TAP course. In the assessment that I did, the 60-something question assessment, actually showed that a job that would interest me in the field that would interest me is actually aligned with my degree, which is disaster management. So I don't know where everybody is in the transition process, but that assessment can kind of guide you, or did for me, towards what a field you might be interested in.
That's excellent. If anybody wants some help with that, let me know. Oh, EJ O'Brien is saying, what was the name of it, Sean?
I don't recall the name of the assessment, but they had us do it on day 3 of the SFL TAP course program. So your third day of the thing, you do an assessment. It's like gauges your interest on, would you like to read a book? Would you like to write poetry? Would you like to work outside? And the number one thing that said I would be interested in doing was disaster management. And like I said, it aligned up with my degree. So it was actually quite surprising. And that allowed me to focus in on networking within the disaster management field.
There you go. And one of the most important things that I did in my second time I went through TAP was exactly those kind of questions. Do you want to work inside or outside? You want to supervise people, not supervise people? These are basic questions. How much do you want to travel? You don't not want to travel? You want to travel all the time? You want to travel 50, 25? What do you want to travel? Do you want to do business development? You want to be technical? I spent about 3 hours one night going through those questions. So great job, Sean. I think you appreciate you bringing that up. And we bring that back to this group, because if you haven't gone through that, that's it. Those are some tough questions when you really sit down and think about it, because you're really kind of building your job of what you want to do. That's really good. So thanks, Sean.
Hey, Don, just to let
Dennis.
you know, it's the DOL employment guide. I did mine back in October, and I still have it sitting in my back file cabinet that I was actually looking through it last night as I'm trying to figure out my way forward here in the next few months. So
excellent.
It's day 3. So if you guys haven't done SFL TAP, I did it back in October. It's a 5-day event. I do not recommend doing everything in 1 week. That's my recommendation. You'll get an overview of the DLL part on day 3, and then you'll do like a further deep dive on day 4 and 5. I just recommend breaking everything up so you can concentrate better. At least that's my opinion. So you can go back and say, hey, this is what you want to do. And then you're more intuitive into the conversation on day 4 and 5.
Hey, great for sharing that. Would you send me that if there's a flyer or something like that, 1 or 2 pages, whatever? Would you send that to me sometime? So Jeff dialed in now, so he's the number at the very end, 1318. So Jeff, I'm going to turn it back to you. I'm going to stop talking so you can just jump in.
All right. Yeah. Goodness gracious, like technical difficulties never fails, does it?
Nope.
So we'll kind of move forward. So last comment I made was that PACE plan, right? The primary, the alternate contingency and emergency piece that you try to figure out. And the reason you want to do that is because you always want to have options. And if you try to focus just on one thing, my sense was that I was going to find myself falling short, because if what I really wanted to do in risk and compliance and whatnot didn't necessarily work out, then I needed a fallback plan. So for me, trying to find things in risk and compliance in the banking and in the physical security and in the insurance arenas were where I started working the majority of my efforts. My alternate was junior ROTC, and I actually had an offer offer at Judson High School here in town to go and take over that junior ROTC detachment they had there. And then for my contingency, I thought, well, you know what, federal service is probably always something that I could go to, but I really had a desire to try my hand in corporate America since I'd been in the military since I was 17. I just wanted to know if I could do it, but I felt pretty confident that federal service could be something that I could easily fit back into, and lots of options in San Antonio. And then really my emergency plan was there are some really interesting sort of box store manager programs for transitioning military folks. I mean, like Lowe's, Home Depot, that kind of thing. So I thought, well, those were offers that were out there as well. And I didn't necessarily want to go work retail, but I still had bills to pay. So I figured let's, at least put a couple of irons in the fire with something like that too. What that allowed me to do though was really start to focus on the skills that I needed for each of those positions and make sure that I could plan accordingly. Building resumes for the risk and compliance piece. There was some training and applications I needed to do for junior ROTC, which I took off on and did at the same time, and started work the federal service piece with USA Jobs just to kind of see what was out there. But it helped frame exactly what I needed to try to capture and what my plan needed to be and how I needed to build that plan out to be pretty competitive at all four of those, just in case I needed to kind of walk myself down the options that I created. All while this is going on though, you're still managing the remainder of your plan, right? You're figuring out where you're going to move, if you're going to build a home, how's that going to work? The VA medical piece is huge. I'm glad to hear you guys had talked about that previously, because that was about an 18-month road for me as well, between doctors and applications and stuff like that. So don't sell yourself short. Continue that VA piece. Make time for those appointments. Get your medical records updated. It will pay you dividends in the long term, and you don't want to overlook that piece. So by that point, I had a pretty good framework, and I had Don in my corner, and I had Matt Shearer as well, and a number of other folks. I saw Kitty Myers on here as well. She was one of the very first people I talked to about my resume at another Starbucks over in the quarry. So a lot of folks that really came alongside and partnered with me as I was trying to figure all of this out. But by then I had a pretty good perspective, and I was starting to do that networking, and I was starting to get involved in some of the veterans transition space that was going on here in San Antonio and in Bexar County area. And then that brought me to my 12-month mark now, about a year out. And I've got a plan. I kind of know where I want to go. I know what space I'm trying to get into. I had been working on trying to fill out some holes that I thought I had in my resume by some online learning and those type of things that I could squeeze in whenever I could. So by the time I got to the year point, now it was really networking with a purpose, right? That's what this phase began for me, was that networking for a purpose. And MTR really helps to try to, I think, teach those skills, right? Because it's so much more than just getting out there and finding somebody in the space that you're interested in and asking them for a job. I mean, that comes, don't get me wrong, and I'll kind of chat through that here in a second, but that's not really how you want to start out. And for me, it was all about trying to build those relationships at this point at my 1-year mark. I had worked with Matt on fixing up my LinkedIn profile. I'd gone out and gotten a snazzy photo. I thought I kind of knew what I needed to do. And then it was all about trying to connect with folks. Fortunately, I had a pretty decent mentor a long time back in 2011 or so, who was retiring out, and he had told me, hey, you need to hop on LinkedIn and start building a network. It's just something that's going to be needed in the future. And boy, was he right. But at my 12-month mark, just because I had folks that were connections with me on LinkedIn didn't mean that I was connected with them. It just meant that we shared a social media platform. So I started trying to reach out to folks and ask people that I knew who had transitioned before me, hey, I'm about to transition. I'd love to talk to you about your experience. What do you do? I'd love to talk to you more about the job. I'm interested in X, Y, or Z. But what I was trying to do was just really nurture that network. I was trying to reconnect with people, with coworkers, with friends. I was trying to seek people out in the transition space that had advice and could help me with fine-tuning my plan. And this is where I started seeking out those experts to help me with the PACE plan as well, and just trying to make sure that I was right in what it is that I had selected as my primary alternate contingency emergency piece. Talking with folks, learning the most that I could, doing some quote-unquote informational interviews, and reaching out to folks and just introducing myself. This is who I am. This is what I'm doing. If you could please just spare 15 minutes, I would love to learn more about what it is that you're involved in, or more about your company, or more about your story, or any of those things. Nurturing that network and basically starting with meaningful posts and making sure that I was following up with folks that did want to try to invest in me, and that I was paying attention to those things and being very humble and very gracious with anyone that wanted to try to help out. I will tell you that at the end, though, one of the things that I realized, and and now I see it as I work sort of on the hiring side here with Amazon a little bit too, is that most of the jobs that you're going to be interested in are going to come from that networking. They're really not going to come from the applications and the things that you do to submit it into a computer someplace that's using an algorithm to try to bump your resume against keyword searches and those kind of things. That network really was what opened a door for me at Amazon. It got me an opportunity to at least know that a job was open, and that whole piece happened because I reconnected with a coworker who we had served together with twice before, years before. Jimmy Alves was his name, and that ended up being a door open for me. So I will tell you that most jobs are going to come from the network rather than just putting in your applications. And I think the jobs that you really want, the ones that are there in your primary portion of your PACE plan, those are going to be definitely network driven jobs. So all the time that I spent there doing that, it's work, right? It is really like a second job. But again, harken back to that family piece, I would get up on Saturday mornings and I would spend 2 hours, 3 hours on LinkedIn or doing a video or some sort of a training course or something like that. And my wife was always very supportive of me the whole time. She understood, she got it because we had planned together and talked about this so much. So that really gets me to my 1 year mark at that point. Does anybody have anything? Because I can't see the hands raised anymore, unfortunately. So I was wondering if anybody had any comments or
anybody got one, or I have one.
Well, I have a question.
Please.
Sorry to step on you, Don.
That's all right. Go ahead.
Yeah, Jeff, I guess, I hope I'm not being impatient, but wondering how did you manage your leave, your transition leave and all of this? And if you're going to get to it, I'll wait at that point.
My transition leave as far as, well, so I had planned my timeline along. I was in a command position, so I knew the exact date that I would be done with that command. And I had negotiated with my wing commander to make sure that the change of command date was going to coincide with me being able to take all of my terminal leave. And in the end, it was a bit of a negotiation. I ended up selling 13 days of leave back. I just couldn't get there with the change of command timelines and things like that. But yeah, I planned that all sort of in that transition timeline. And part of that network that helps you transition, has to be your boss as well. You need to be open and candid and frank with your boss because, you spent, a couple of decades of your life taking care of others. And at this point, you really need to take just a sliver of your time and start to take care of yourself because the moment after, the day after your date of retirement, the military is just going to keep on trucking and they're not going to miss you. They're going to move right on to the next generation. And I think once you kind of understand that and you get your head around it, then it makes it easier to have those transition talks with your boss. So I don't know if that answered your question or not.
No, yeah, it did.
Okay. Anybody else?
I'm always told, hey, continue developing your network, but don't immediately ask for that kind of additional, information about conducting informational interviews. So what is an acceptable timeline to where after you make a connection, you're kind of developing the relationship somewhat? Is it time to, hey, can you put me on the correct path or offer me some guidance?
Yep. So I don't necessarily share the thought that an informational interview would be inappropriate simply because it's fact finding and you're building a rapport and you're trying to learn. It's giving folks that are interested and willing to help out. By and large, the majority of people out there are interested in trying to help out, right? But it gives that opportunity for that conversation starter. At some point, you're absolutely right, though. You have to transition from just talking and chatting and trying to support one another on meaningful posts and those kind of things. And eventually there's an ask, right? And we'll talk about it here in a bit, but the ask time frame that I really went with was about the 90-day mark. I think that that's about the right time. 90 days before you're looking to actually begin working is whenever you should seriously start dropping applications and sending resumes and looking for job ads and then working in your network with those companies that actually are advertising for jobs. And at that point, you're starting to ask those questions. Hey, I saw there's a job requisition open at Amazon, Jeff. Do you know anything about that? Yeah, absolutely. Let me take a look, because I had a rapport built with someone for months ahead of time. Then I'm like, yeah, it's open. Here's some details about it. Are you interested? Yeah, I'm really interested. Okay, well, there's an Amazon internal referral system, right? So they want all of us to be recruiters. Well, if I've developed a relationship with somebody through social media or a couple of coffees here or there or a LinkedIn Mill City event or something like that, then by the time that person approaches me, it's not a cold call, right? We have a relationship and a rapport, and I know you and I want to help you because I want to help you transition. So that ask is not uncomfortable when it says, hey, do you guys refer people internally? Yeah, absolutely. Send me your resume. Let me help you out and I'll do that for you. Does that help?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think we have to recognize that people that we know want to help us. They don't want to be used, but they want to help us. And there's a difference. And I think that's what Jeff described, if you would agree, Jeff.
Mm-hmm. And
Go
it's
ahead,
also
Jeff.
being grateful. Being grateful. It never hurts to say, thanks. I really appreciate that. Or wow, just being humble and kind went a long way, I think, with people that I was trying to engage with. And I actually, as I was kind of building my network, have created friends that I've carried into transition and through with too, that I still keep in touch with. So that's a side benefit you don't necessarily expect, right? Is that you actually create relationships that are going to be enduring. I'm off on Saturday to have a cup of coffee with a guy from a company in San Antonio that I just met through networking. And, now we're friends, our families are friends, we get together for dinners, and sometimes it just works that way. And that's okay.
How did you deal with, because I'm sure you sent notes to different people you wanted to network with and you got zero response, and you sent them another note and another note and another note and you got zero response. How'd you deal with it?
So I was about a 2-note person, right? And so if somebody didn't respond back to me after the second note, then to be honest with you, I just moved on. But I used a little trick with my LinkedIn messaging to kind of keep who it was that I was chatting with and what the conversation was. And it helped me keep track of where I was in the conversation. What do outs did I have with that person? Did I need to provide them a resume? Did they ask me for some other information that I owed them? Or did they leave a door open for me in the future? One of those, hey, reach back out if you have any more questions kind of thing, right? Most folks always are going to do something like that. And so what I did was the ones that I knew were active networking partners with me and that I had a rapport with, I left that chat open in LinkedIn. And the ones that turned out to not be useful, or we didn't click, or there wasn't a rapport or something like that, I would archive that. So when I looked in my LinkedIn chat window, I saw all of the contacts that I had active, ongoing relationships with, and was able to keep track of who and what and where and when and those kind of things that I need to do. If somebody said, hey, Jeff, shoot me your resume, I was going to do that, right? And I was going to do it in a timely fashion because I wanted to respect the offer that was provided to me by somebody that no obligation to help me whatsoever.
That was if I can, that was really good, because too often I talk to people and they get really ticked off when people don't respond. If you remember back in your career, you were busy sometimes. You didn't have a chance to get out to everybody. And some other people are going to be busy and they're not going to be able to get back to you. So don't let it bother you. Don't build a story around it and say, wow, I said the wrong thing, or maybe they don't want to help me. Maybe my resume doesn't show well enough. Maybe my LinkedIn profile has problems. You can start building a story and kill yourself, not literally, but you can deflate yourself emotionally. And you just got to set a timeline. Like he said, 2 calls, done. Move on. And don't let it bother you.
There was a company here in New Braunfels called Rush Trucking, and I was really interested in Rush Trucking. The commercial trucking industry was interesting and unique to me, and I kind of like logistics and order and stuff like that. And there's obviously compliance and risk that goes into a business like theirs, and so I tried repeatedly to sort of break in at different levels to just talk to folks in Rush Trucking, and I couldn't break through those walls one bit. So eventually, I just said, well, let's look at another company that maybe I'm interested in, and I just moved on.
Matt, you had a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask about CRMs. Do you use the CRM as well as the LinkedIn system you talked about, which is amazing? Did you have some kind of tracking of when you talk to people and when you owe something to them?
I didn't necessarily have a tracker for that type of thing. I used just the networking piece. But what I did do is when I started applying for jobs, I created a tracker there. What company was it? What day did I apply? What was the job requisition? What was the first communication, second communication? When was I no longer under consideration for those jobs? And I used basically like a matrix, if you will, to keep track of where I was when I started really applying. And that came in handy. And, I had 14, not great experiences that I learned an awful lot from before I fell into an opportunity at Amazon that I think the 14 bad experiences I had from my interviewing skills not being that good or any of those kind of things ended up making me a little more marketable by the time I got in the interview routine for the job I'm in right now.
Yep. Every failure is a step towards success. Dennis?
Yeah. Hey, Jeff, quick question. Would you be willing to share your CRM with the group or even with me, just so I could either use it or make it better or
yeah,
something?
I'm sure. CRM meaning comment resolution matrix from my military days. Is that the guy? Because it's just like an Excel spreadsheet, and I'm willing to pass that to Don, and he can share that wherever he wants to.
That would be great.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I was thinking it is too. But you said matrix, so I was kind of thinking it might be a little more something else. So I appreciate it.
No.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. And by the way, reach out to me as well through LinkedIn, and I'll share anything that I've got. No proprietary ownership.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, we better let you
Well,
get
this
back
is
on your 12-month time. Go ahead.
Yeah. So then, I'm doing those things that 12-month time. By the 9-month time, now it's really time to start getting into pulling together the plan and creating actionable milestones for me and continuing on, right? And I will tell you that in the position I was in, it was kind of hard. You didn't have an ability to share a lot of your transition with folks that were, at least I didn't in my workspace that I was in. It was probably, sort of the position, and you didn't want to be, or at least I didn't want to be viewed as, hey, you've quit the team, you're retiring, those kind of things. So I was able to kind of link in with the MTR, and that was good for me because the greatest thing about Military Transition Network was that the rank came off whenever you got on Chime or Zoom or whatever your social media choice was. And there were a group of people that were kind of holding me accountable. I call that find your board of advisors. And that might be a mentor. That's part of your board of advisors. It could be MTR. It was my wife as well. Find those folks that are going to be honest with you. Find those folks that are going to give you honest feedback and critiques. Kitty, if she's still on, she gave me some really good feedback whenever I first went and talked to her about my resume. It had nothing to do with my resume. It had to do with my intensity. She told me, she goes, you're too intense. You need to calm down. And that's part of taking that military edge off, right? And at the time when Kitty told me that at Starbucks, I was like, what? Wait a minute. No, what? And as time rolled on, I'm like, man, was she right? You have to just kind of be a human. And a lot of times making that transition from the military, you've got to create and find that human aspect in you. But you need honest people around you. You need folks that are going to take a look at your resume and tell you when it's not good. You need folks that are going to help you and help you focus on what training you need to do or what steps you need to take to strengthen your resume or to strengthen it, your ability to be able to get that job that you want that's part of your primary plan or your alternate plan. Mentors who have traveled that path, who have been there before, who understand where you are, those are the ones that you really need to seek out. And at this time, you're still working things like your VA medical. Make sure you've got your relocation. It's time to start messing with your move and trying to get that kind of stuff all done. Don't forget you got a retirement ceremony coming up, and pay attention to the family. There's a lot going on, and it gets a little hectic. That's why you need to be grounded, I think, with that whole board of advisors. So by the time I made it to the 6-month mark, I was feeling pretty good that I had a good plan. What I wasn't feeling good about was the fact that I had never done a job interview in my life. I had joined the military at 17. I went to ROTC scholarship and jumped right back in the military. And so for my entire adult life, I'd never had to really interview for anything. And I knew that about myself, and I knew I wasn't going to be good at it. And so at my 6-month mark, I started practicing, knowing that most companies really aren't going to look at you seriously until you're about 90 days from the time whenever you want to start working. I went into it knowing that I was going to just throw away some time, but I was going to get better. I was going to learn. I was going to practice. And boy, did I botch up some interviews. One of them I just completely blew off and missed because it was the wrong time on my calendar. And, the guy gave me a piece of his mind when I finally called to apologize. I got all kinds of interesting stories when I just started trying to figure this out. The lesson is that you might have been the best at whatever it was that you were doing in the military, but you're probably not the best at transitioning because you only really have had to do it this time. Now, maybe if I transition to another job in another industry or whatever, I'll be a little better at it because I've done it once, but you're just not the best at it. I wasn't the best at it, and I had many failures as I was going through there, but every failure became a way for me to sort of deep dive myself and figure out, all right, what did I mess up here? What was wrong with my resume? What was wrong with my questioning and my answering to the behavioral questions in the end? You just get better. And so I did that. And this is also a time whenever I reached back into my family too, because at this point I knew that there were a number of Amazon jobs that were risk and compliance based. And so it had bubbled up to the top of my companies that I was really looking at for my primary portion of my plan. And I had researched and learned about Amazon's hiring process. And I knew that behavioral questions were what it was all about, right? I had found a whole slew in different blogs of these behavioral questions and basically pulled them together, made a big list of them, and gave them to my wife. And so when I would commute my back and forth from New Braunfels into San Antonio, she's asking me behavioral questions every night, 45 minutes to an hour while I'm in traffic, while I practiced and practiced and practiced. And that was pretty useful. That was good because, again, she's part of my board of advisors, and my wife has no problem telling me when I'm not doing good. So it was natural for her, I guess, at that point. But it helped me. It helped me kind of grow past some of my fears of talking. It helped me practice my stories that I needed to know really, really, really well so that it appeared as though I was super fluid to the interviewer that I was talking to. But that's the part whenever I now started looking for those job ads and I started trying to figure out what it was that I really wanted to do in each of those companies. And I probably wrote 30 resumes. So a lot of folks will come and they'll talk talk to me about their resume and they have a resume. And my challenge back is that, well, you really have to have a resume for every job that you want to apply for, because every job requisition is different. Every job ad is different. So every resume for every job needs to be different too. It needs to be custom tailored. And so I just started tailoring resumes and keeping them and getting better and refining my words and things like that and practicing. So really that was where I was at the 6-month mark, was practice, practice, practice. And then in 3 months, it's game on, right? Now it's the time for you to actually get hired. I was blessed simply because I was offered an opportunity with Amazon in that time frame between my 6-month and 3-month time frame. And then Amazon, I think because of COVID, was able to hold the job for me until I was completed with my military time. So that was a true blessing that I wasn't expecting and have been very grateful for. But if that hadn't have happened and I hadn't have picked up this opportunity during that time frame, then 3 months would have been full tilt boogie. Now that's the time whenever you're putting in, 3, 4, 5 job ads with a company at a time, you're tracking them, trying to make sure you know what's going on. You're making sure you talk to your network and the folks that you've met and whatnot in each of those companies and keeping them apprised of what it is that you're doing. And again, asking for their feedback if you can get feedback from them on something, maybe a job that didn't work out for you. At this point, you just basically are working the PACE plan. And you have to remember that the jobs that you're really most interested in are going to come from the networking that you started months and months and months before. So that by the time you end it, you hopefully have got the position that you want to transition into that you think is going to be a good fit. Maybe it will be, maybe it won't be, but it's still something that you've planned for, something you've selected, something you've strove for, and that you've achieved by the time that it's time to transition. Don't get discouraged, though. Each of those 14 no's that I had, there was something great that came out of each of them. I realized and grew myself on what I was and wasn't doing well, but don't get discouraged and keep trying. For Amazon, we had a virtual hiring fair a number of months back. We were hiring 33,000 people at one day, and this was over on the East Coast. For those 33,000 people that we hired, we had over 200,000 applicants. And so it's very competitive, especially in the COVID world. And sometimes it's just not going to work, and you got to dust yourself off and walk forward to the next opportunity and just keep walking forward. Every step, one boot in front of the other, until you get to the place where you want to be. You might at some point realize that you need to get to your emergency plan. The good point, though, is that if you built a good PACE plan whenever you were preparing, you've got contingencies. You've got a fallback, and then you can regroup. You can shake off the dust, if you will, do some time in that job that might have been your emergency plan job, and keep working and striving to get to where you need to be for that job that was on your primary portion of your PACE plan. Regardless of how it all works out, though, the one sort of enlightening part of all of it is I was in charge. I was in charge of Jeff the first time probably in my entire life. I didn't have a board that was picking my job for me. I didn't have to have a senior mentor make a phone call for me or any. I was the one who was setting the pace. I was the one who was making the opportunities for myself. It was kind of neat because I could also say no for the first time in my life too. I just don't think that company is good for me. I talked to one recruiter for a company that was doing risk and compliance in the banking industry, and I asked him a question when we were done with our discussion about what the culture was, and it stumped him. He's like, "Well, what do you mean? The salaries are about $160,000 here, and this is the place to work." That wasn't what I was looking for, and I said no and walked away from that opportunity because I wasn't interested in that. I wanted the culture. I wanted some place that was going to be sort of along the lines of what I was interested in being and the teams that I had been part of, and I got to choose. But along the way, just enjoy yourself. Have some fun with it. Try. It's easy to say whenever you're on the other side of it, but just try not to get stressed out about it. Do not let your transition get in the way of your family relationships with your marriage, your kids, or any of those kind of things. Just guard against those type of pitfalls. And at the end, the same skills that made us all wildly successful in the military will again make us all wildly successful once we transition into our next lives.
Excellent.
So that's kind of a quick and down and dirty, Don, of where I was, what I did, and kind of how my plan was. And parts of it, not necessarily perfect, and I'm sure could be done a whole lot better if I had to do it again. But it's what got me through, and I hope that folks out there at least were able to pull some nuggets out of this this kind of chat. More than willing to answer any questions.
I see one hand up already, Camille.
Hi, Jeff. This is Camille. I was. You talked about your, the 4-step plan or whatever your primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency plan. I know that oftentimes we go into when we're trying to find out what we like and who we are and what we're going to be when we grow up. Did the entrepreneurship track ever cross your mind? And if so, what was your decision to go into the job that you're in versus entrepreneurship, or was it never a thought for you?
Sure. So it wasn't ever a thought for me. The risk along with it just really doesn't suit my personality. I didn't really want to be the guy anymore. I was looking to kind of be the guy's guy, for all the personal right reasons for me. I just didn't want to be the senior leader anymore. I didn't want to be the owner of the business. I wanted to be the guy, right? I just wanted to be the guy's guy. So entrepreneurship really didn't strike me as something that was interesting to me. But I will say that that's just me, though. A lot of folks love the freedom that entrepreneurship might offer them. They love the opportunities that exist for veterans, for the VA loans, for small businesses, and there are a ton of opportunities out there for that. I would say that if that's what you're putting into your PACE plan as your primary, then make sure you build a network of successful transitioned veterans who have been in that space and are operating businesses with a high level of success, and try to build that board of advisors around you with people that can be honest with you about the pitfalls of it and about the successes, and help mentor and coach you through it.
Thank you.
Excellent advice. And now, Camille, for a guy who's running 2 companies, it took me 7 years before I started, 9 years, 10 years before I started the second one. I like what Jeff said, man. It wasn't on my mind 10, 11 years ago. Once I got more freedom with money and other stuff like that, it took some of that risk away. But I had to have a team behind me. So I love what he said.
I'm a risky person. I've this 25 years, maybe it's my personality opposite of Jeff. I've been, the woman's woman, and for far too long, and I'm ready to be the woman, the woman I want to be without the confines of someone else telling me who I'm supposed to be. Like I said, you missed it, Jeff, but I said I'm an aircraft maintenance, so I want to wear my earrings and do my hair, put on my makeup, and do what I want to do. So I don't want those rules.
I get it.
And
I had 6 years of aircraft maintenance, but the good thing is that you are in charge and you get to choose at this point. It's super enlightening whenever you just sort of think through that a minute, and then you're like, yeah, I got this. This is going to be amazing.
Thank you so much.
Camille, one thing we are thinking of doing this year as we grow to 9 is to create one cohort for entrepreneurs.
I think you should.
So we already had 2 people this last year. One guy ended up, in fact, both of them are still in the service. They're not separating and retiring until later this year. That's something we reached out to both of them to connect, and let's have a conversation, because I want to start an entrepreneur track, because I think that would help entrepreneurs to be together and talking through it. We'll keep you in there. Yeah, good question. Who else got a question? Mark Hyatt, you got one.
Jeff, I just wanted to tell you thank you for speaking this evening. I also want to thank you because just last year, you may remember me, we met in your office with some key folks to help me, and I just wanted to pass on the thanks because with your help, I was able to get my kids to stay going to the Randolph school system with the help that you provided. So I want to pass on thanks. I'm that Judson senior aerospace science instructor that was hired. So
awesome. Congratulations. That's fantastic.
Enjoying that. And that was a goal of mine. And it was a great opportunity. So I've got to take off, and I wanted to say thank you. And by the time I got settled after moving out of my mold house at Randolph, I tried to get back in touch with you, and you'd already departed. So good avenue to pass on my thanks in many ways. So appreciate everything as well. And Don, thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for being here tonight, and thanks for making those comments, Mark. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
congrats on the
Mark.
job you got.
That.
Yeah, Mark's another successful guy who did some time with us, and now he's a ROTC instructor and loving it. So somebody asked me one time, says, when am I done transitioning? And I said, when you get the job truly like, and you've been in it long enough to say, this is where I want to stay. Because 75% of military transition out of the first job in 12 to 18 months. They probably know early on, like in the 3-month point, this isn't working out. I'm not liking it. And you start into the transition again. So if you can spend 3 to 6 months in and you're still liking it, I think you're there. So at least that's kind of the way I'm thinking through it. So who else has got a question?
Hey, Don, this is Dan.
Please, Dan, jump in.
Yeah, no, it's more of a statement. I think you picked Jeff for a good reason because he did it so successfully. And watching how methodically he did it, it can be like watching Tiger Woods play golf. It can kind of be counterintuitive and make you think like, man, I can't play golf like that, so why even try? But I remember, I was part of Jeff's cohort, and I remember him talking about different opportunities that didn't work out and wasn't totally like, now it seems all crystal clear exactly where he was going. But I think what he said about pace and being methodical and kind of taking it one step at a time is the real lesson. lesson here, not getting hung up on things that maybe don't go the way that he had planned. I remember distinctly the meeting where he talked about that connecting with that friend of his and getting ready for the interview, and of course it all worked out. That doesn't surprise me. But wherever you're at right now, don't let the fact that somebody's, and I'm speaking to myself really, but don't let the fact that somebody's already where you want to be intimidate you. Learn what you can and be confident in your own abilities. Because what Jeff said about us getting to where we are because we have good skills is really true. Wherever what we want to do, and I don't want to be a loss management guy for Amazon, but I have my own path I'm pursuing, as do all of us. So Jeff's great. Thanks for choosing him.
I would say one thing too. One thing Jeff didn't really emphasize enough: COVID struck, right? And here he's trying to separate the end of May, early June, Jeff?
It turned out to be, it was the end of June, but it's because my family got COVID, but it was originally supposed to be July. But that became tough because COVID became a full-time job in addition to my other full-time jobs.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, Jeff was the chief of security for JBSA, all the bases, as well as the executive agent for Randolph. We used to know him as the wing commander. Now I guess we call him the base commander or executive agent under JBSA. But that's 2 full-time jobs, and then COVID, and he's trying to manage all that and transition. And some people, so you can't transition during COVID. Well, heck, he did 2 full-time jobs. Maybe you could say third, and still transition successfully. So if you're intentional, you have a plan. And I think that's the key that we keep talking about. We know it in the military. It's not the plan, it's the planning process. It's the conversations you have, the thinking you do, the branches and sequels that he talked about that are so critical. And anybody else got a question? Please.
Yes, sir. I got a question.
Jump in there.
Yeah. So, with what Jeff talked about, trying to figure out where you want to go, what you want to do, how much you want to make, for us, where we want to go is kind of becoming a primary, and that where we want to go happens to be Germany. So would you happen to have any resources that you can send my way for someone who's trying to retire from the military and then go into a foreign country?
Jeff, or I'm going to open it up to anybody.
Well, hi, this is Kitty. There are a lot of international complications of work if you want to stay within the government, that might be one thing. But if you want to be on the civilian side, you need to check with the laws in Germany about how long it's going to take you to be able to work there. It gets very complicated if you're I forget the term, but if you're not a resident, if you're not a
SOFA?
The SOFA and the SOFA.
I think it's the Schengen zone. If you're not from a country in the Schengen zone.
Civilian working there. Yeah. It gets complicated as to what the rules are.
Yes, ma'am. We've already done our research on that, and it is very complicated. Luckily, we got about 2 years to start figuring all that out, which is why we're starting now well in advance. It does help that the spouse and kids, they're all dual citizens, so we got a shoe in there for a little bit, and then just sorting out what status I have to have in going over to another country.
Yeah, great. And if you're starting 2 years out, that's going to give you some leeway to go through all those legal hoops that you'll have to go through.
Hey, this is Andy. So I'll just jump in real quick, since that's kind of one of my thoughts too, is to try to go to Germany for a lot of just personal reasons. So the road that I chose to go down that road, to go that way, is joining a German company. So the company that I'm working with, Volkswagen, German company, very Germanic. I speak German throughout the day to my German colleagues. So you may look at trying to join a company that's either based in Germany that has assets in the United States, or has a lot of opportunities. So maybe one of my goals is to try to come into the company, stay for a couple of years as I got a high school age kid, and then try to take a broadening assignment in Germany as I can grow with the company. It's something we've already talked about with my manager. So just a thought you might look at from a different perspective. There's probably you could maybe work on a government contractor or whatever, or as a Army, Navy, Air Force civilian. But you may also try look at big international companies, Siemens, Volkswagen, that kind of thing. So just a thought, looking at me from a different perspective.
Excellent idea. Thanks, Andy. Anybody else got anything for Sergeant Beersdorf?
Yeah, I'll throw one thing in. Booz Allen Hamilton, I know, just picked up a big contract over there. And so they're starting up, I think it was for AFRICOM. So they were, at one point this summer, they were hiring a bunch of folks. So that's a way. And you talked about government contractor getting in there. Dodge teachers another way, but I think that's pretty damn competitive.
Somebody else? Thanks, Mike. Somebody else jumped in.
I got another option for you. Look at NATO. NATO has several naval commands and installations throughout Germany, as well as Belgium and the Netherlands. For a quick example, I was stationed at Brunsum, Netherlands, which was just about 20 so miles just across the border from Germany on the western side. And lots of U.S. citizens who are in NATO civilian positions. So those are other opportunities available to you. Just have to go to the NATO probably website and then look at the job openings there. But there are opportunities there as well.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Surprisingly enough, you can try the Department of State. The Department of State has foreign managers, they have technical managers, and it is paramilitary. So you still have the government benefits, but you're civilian, and you also get a full federal retirement. So you'll end up being a double dipper.
That's a really great point. I got a lot of friends that are state, and then they've said that they love transitioning military for lots of reasons. So that's a really great idea, George. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
And you've heard us talk about Shantae Hall and Centurion Military Alliance. And Shantae also has a job with state in recruiting. So you might want to do if you don't already know her or are not part of CMA, you might want to just do a LinkedIn connection with her.
Definitely. I want to highlight one thing real quick. That is what you just saw the last 5 minutes is exactly the power of MTR. It's about everybody sharing the knowledge they have to help somebody with a question that they have. That's what we do every time we get together. That was fantastic. Thanks, everybody. Anybody else got anything for Sergeant Beaversdorf or Sergeant Beaversdorf? Anything else you want to say?
I'm George Thomas. I did a military envoy sort of role in Saudi Arabia as an expert for the United States. I've been back home now 48 months. I've gone to 10, 12 career fairs, 7 interviews, got the suits. I have the clothes on LinkedIn. I'm on Monster, Career Builder, cleared jobs, but my clearance now has lapsed, and I am trying desperately to figure out how I'm supposed to move forward because I'm out of ideas, out of gas.
I know one thing for that. What George and I are going to do tomorrow afternoon, but just after lunch, is have a conversation. We just linked up this afternoon. I think Matt and him just talked. So if anybody else has a thought,
George,
you could connect with him.
Where are you at? What are you looking to do? I mean, it'd be helpful to kind of know a little more. Maybe we can do, harness the power of what Don was talking a minute ago. We can all kind of crowdsource some ideas.
My background is in aviation, defense, and space, degreed in aviation maintenance management, aircraft mechanics license, project management, master certificate, PMP Six Sigma black belt. But I am trying to either transition, right now, as far as aviation, there's approximately 100,000 people that are out of work. And I talked with a lady out of Washington, D.C. with Easter Seals, and she was saying that aviation's not going to come back anytime quick. You're going to have to figure some type of transition, role that's permanent. Today, I've been applying to get into Mitsubishi as far as, working on steam turbines, which they won't disappear. But I've done all these things that I'm trying to do. Where I live is in Edgewater, Florida, which is a suburb of Daytona. This area here is mostly a party town. I had worked the space program for just shy of 16 years. I'm trying to figure where my why and where my transfer is into a different industry, but I haven't gotten very far as meeting people, or my networking was mostly my job. And when I laid us off from the space program, 30,000 of us went out the door.
Hey, this is James Simons. Everybody knows me as Simo. And I don't know a lot of the resources in the area that you're talking about, but one of the places that I've been looking at to retire is down here in Huntsville, Alabama. And you're a program manager. You're already got a good space background. I would offer that you continue to look at some of those. If you're open to maybe relocating, I know because I've been doing the research, there's a lot of program management kind of positions here in the Huntsville, Alabama area. There's a lot of tech jobs. There's a lot of space jobs. I think you sound like a pretty good fit, that you probably might have some good success in this area if you're willing to come up here. I can tell you the cost of living is pretty good. There's a lot of things growing. Facebook's putting a place down here. Toyota Mazda's put a factory in here, and they're hiring like crazy. So there are definitely some opportunities here that I think that you could fit into.
And the same thing with South Texas, where they're building 1 or 2 major spaceports for civilian. You've got Jeff Bezos and you've got the guy from Tesla who are building down there.
Elon Musk, yep.
So it's not just government space work that's going on. There's infancy probably is with the civilian side.
Great ideas.
Colorado also, I keep getting notifications that I'm perfect for this job or that job cover that job. And if I had your credentials, I might be perfect for those jobs. So there's a lot of things happening up here around Colorado Springs. And it's a lot of it looks like the companies that build the stuff that you worked on, that might be the market you might want to reach out to also.
Yeah, if you look at George's LinkedIn profile, you'll see Raytheon, L3, Lockheed Martin, FAA. So a lot of that experience you're talking. Good ideas.
I think a lot of it though goes back to kind of what Jeff was talking about during his conversation though. It's that kind of nexus, right, of like, what is it you want to do, where do you want to be, and what do you want to earn? So if you're open to moving to Huntsville, South Texas, Colorado Springs, that might be a thing. But if you're kind of in the greater Daytona area because of family, house, whatever, that's going to change the conversation too. So we're not kind of knowing where you're at, but I think just talking with with just getting started with a group, I think it's going to be really helpful for you to kind of tease these things out and really kind of help you kind of get refocused. But
the house I bought here when the space program ended, I'm glad I did. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a place to live. On the other hand, when they let everybody go, this was just, it's now Greater Detroit. There's just a huge vacuum. The quality control role that I've held for so many years, I'm trying to get out of it, but yet I've done it for so long. It's hard to get anyone to see me in any other light. Most organizations, when they fail by the government or the regulatory, then the government finds the corporation. The corporation then comes and apologizes for their wrongdoings, much like the Boeing situation. And then in Boeing situation, they fired 150 people. So I'm trying to figure out where's that next warm place, but yet not the guy with the bullseye on his back because of the dynamics of organizational collapse or behavioral failure of the entire organization. And then the corporation wants someone to blame for their fine from the government or the military or the DOD or an agency.
So one of those, that PISA with 30,000 people unemployed there, that's a highly competitive, moving might be a good option if that works for you. That's going to be some good conversation.
I would say I don't want to say an upside to COVID, but unlike even this time 12 months ago, the need to choose necessarily in many regards between where you want to live and what you want to do, you no longer potentially have to make that choice with a lot of careers. Obviously, hands-on ones, you absolutely do. But, I'm in the finance industry. That has changed completely from in-person meetings to 95% on Zoom. I'm definitely not a cyber guy, but I was at a cyber symposium, I suppose, and a couple of gentlemen who had started up multiple cyber companies. They had been based out of San Francisco. They said, man, we're done moving people to take these jobs. We're looking for talent nationwide. We're looking for talent worldwide, but we've proven we can collaborate. So I think it's expanded significantly from March till now and will continue to do so. But I think in many regards, you can live where you want and potentially do this sort of job, assuming it didn't require hands-on work with the company of your choosing. So I would continue to explore that. And then the one piece I'd add to the how much do I want to make, I would make sure you distinguish between salary of the place you're going to and total income, because I think most people on here are retiring from the military. You're getting this platinum plated retirement plan from the American taxpayer that just does not exist elsewhere. That's coming in, plus the vast majority receive a VA disability rating that's coming in tax-free. So, depending on your expenses, your tastes, et cetera, that's typically between the two, that could be 24,000 to 70 to 90,000 here. The VA rating could be, at 80%, you're looking at another $22,000. So that could be 60, 40, 60, $80,000 coming in for fog and a mirror. That doesn't mean you should be undercut by or underpaid for what you want to do. It just means that I think it gives you more options to say, what do I want to do to still meet my overall income number, not focused on necessarily the salary at that next career.
Thanks, Jeff. That was really good. So we got about 3 minutes left for our scheduled time. Hey, I want to mention one thing if we don't have any other questions. So what you're seeing tonight is a graduate of the program and somebody who worked through his process. And I really want to say thanks to Jeff for being here and to sharing again his journey and his successes and his failures. And I appreciate him not being shy on being willing to share the failures. And we're all going to have failures. The hardest part sometimes we go through life is recognizing that failures are the step to progress. You talk to Elon Musk, how many times is he going to fail? Look what just happened to one of his rockets this last weekend. It exploded. And what was his mindset? mindset, it's just a step to progress. So we got to all think about that. So
That on purpose.
what's that?
He blew up that rocket on purpose.
Think so? Is that what he said, or is that?
No, it was planned to explode right before it landed.
Okay.
I thought the same thing. I was like, seriously? And then, but what you just said, hey, it's the learning progress, right?
That's right.
So
That's right.
there's something way above our heads that he trying to get to that us minions can't fathom. That guy's so smart.
So 8 to 10 people getting together in a cohort every other week to do just what we just did here. If somebody comes in with an idea, somebody comes in with a question, we gather the information of the group, we share ideas, we help each other along the way, we hold each other accountable to the plan, which you didn't see tonight, but what are you going to do in the next 2 weeks? And if you didn't do it, why not? And that's what we do. So we want to start with a couple more cohorts getting ready in the spring. So if you're interested, I see a lot of people are already LinkedIn messaging me, and I'm putting a note back out to let's have a conversation, because almost everybody starts with that question. You heard a bunch of people, I don't know what I want to do yet. Well, that's exactly what I help people do. If you need help with LinkedIn, that's exactly what Matt does. So I want to share one slide. This is our logo, Military Transition Roundtable. It's like a mastermind. There's our website, militarytransitionroundtable.com. Please join us. You'll see a number of testimonies there. And then there is a GoFundMe page. Again, I'm not here to ask you guys to give. If you feel inclined, that's great. What we'd love to do is you get to know us, is be able to pass this out to help us raise some money so we can continue to do this. Looking for those influencers, those decision makers. There's a lot of folks who have transitioned out of the service who are interested in helping organizations like this. We want to continue to help you guys. Matt, do you want to say anything?
I'm sorry I was late. I had another flicking event, but that's the power of teams, that we have people that take over for me. Anne Marie did a wonderful job tonight.
Yeah.
It's so good to see so many people. I was like, wow, 2 rooms.
This is great.
It was great. And I would say that if you are really interested and have more questions, let us know. We want to add you to our ongoing groups. We have some people that have graduated, and I know Andy just accepted an offer with a company, and that just makes me feel, that gives me job satisfaction.
That's right. Keeps us fired up.
It does get us fired up, really, really fired up.
Yeah, and Cho just mentioned that he starting an internship with Amazon. So we got 2 great newses tonight.
That makes my day, man.
Yeah. So the other thing we do is we work with DISC personality assessment to help you understand yourself a little bit better. And it's a career transition report. So you'll spend a little bit of time on values and communication and interviewing. And so we help in several different ways, and that's been very valuable for a number of folks. So any last questions before we end? So somebody asked me on LinkedIn, do we have other events like this? We are going to hold other big events like this going into 2021, but the majority of what we do is the every other week cohorts. Tuesday at 10 a.m. Central, Thursday night at 7 p.m. and 8:15 p.m. Central. So we are looking to start some other times that work for folks. We're thinking early morning. If we can get some people from Germany or even Southwest Asia, we could start something maybe in the middle of the night, whatever works for them. And we're looking for an entrepreneur group. Camille, we haven't forgot about you. Thanks for being here, everybody. Really excited that you're all here. We really appreciate that you guys came tonight. Appreciate the engagement with the questions and the sharing and the pouring into each other. I want everybody to have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Please be safe. Consider everybody, and I don't want to make it political, but wear the mask, keep your distance, be safe, keep healthy. Hope to see you all back in January. Thanks, everybody. You have a great night.